On the 4th of November 1914, the British ship Endurance set sail across stormy seas, heading toward the most dangerous and mysterious continent in the world, Antarctica. On board were 28 men, led by the explorer Sir Ernest Shackleton. His goal was extraordinary. He wanted to achieve something no one had ever done before. He wanted to walk across the entire continent of Antarctica. Imagine this, friends. A time with no smartphones, no GPS, and no modern technology. Temperatures as brutal as -50 degrees Celsius, snowstorms all around. And yet Shackleton planned to cross from one edge of the continent to the other on foot. The Endurance was to reach the coast of Antarctica through the Weddell Sea. Their plan was clear. They would land at a specific point and then start trekking toward the South Pole. After crossing the pole, they would continue to the Ross Sea. In total, the trek was expected to cover 2,900 kilometers. If everything went according to plan, the journey would take about 120 days. But as we often see in history, things did not go according to plan. The struggles that awaited them were unimaginable. On the 5th of November 1914, the Endurance reached a whaling station on South Georgia Island. This was the last human settlement on their way. If you look at the map, this group of islands lies near the tip of South America. Just south of them is the protruding part of Antarctica, known as the Antarctic Peninsula. Beside it lies the Weddell Sea, a body of water surrounded by Antarctica on 3 sides. Because of this, the ice could not flow out easily, and a dense permanent layer of ice covered the sea. The weather was harsh that day, and many people advised Shackleton to delay the mission. They warned him that continuing under these conditions would be extremely risky, but Shackleton insisted. Nothing could stop him, and the Endurance pressed forward into the icy seas. By the 5th of December 1914, the Endurance kept moving forward, but soon their worst fears became reality. The ice in the Weddell Sea was much heavier and denser than anyone had expected. Shackleton, however, pressed on, determined to reach their landing point. By the 18th of January 1915, after navigating along the edges of the ice for weeks, the ship became completely stuck. A few days later, some crew members noticed a 15-foot-long chasm in the ice about 50 meters from the ship. It seemed like their last chance to break free. For 3 hours, the engines ran at full speed, trying to push the ship out of the ice. But the Endurance did not move even an inch. The crew went out onto the ice, attempting to cut through with their available tools. They failed. Gradually, the ice sheet holding the ship began drifting farther from the coast. Their planned landing at Vassal Bay became unreachable, with water separating the ice from the land. The ship was trapped, and every effort to free it proved useless. Weeks and months passed as they tried to escape the ice. Winter approached, bringing 24 hours of darkness and even harsher conditions. Shackleton ordered the crew to spend the winter on the ship. The cold increased, snowstorms raged, and the ice around the ship continued to crush it. Photographer Frank Hurley captured these moments, taking pictures of the ship being slowly crushed by the ice. By the 30th of September 1915, cracks appeared on the Endurance, but the crew did not lose hope. Then, on the 24th of October 1915, at 6:45 p.m., the ice pressure suddenly broke part of the ship. A heavy piece of ice smashed the stern. Water began seeping in, and the wooden structure started to crack. The crew worked relentlessly, pumping water out for 3 days straight. The temperature was -8.5 degrees Celsius, yet their focus remained unwavering. Some tried to loosen the surrounding ice to reduce pressure, but nothing worked. Finally, Shackleton made the difficult decision to abandon the ship. The Endurance had been trapped in ice for over 9 months, and now it was beyond saving. On the 27th of October 1915, a loud explosion echoed as the rear of the ship rose 20 feet. The rudder and stern broke apart, and water flooded the front. By then, thankfully, all crew members had left the ship. The Endurance sank, and with it went Shackleton's dream of crossing Antarctica on foot. Now, the real struggle for survival had begun. The crew was stranded on a floating ice sheet with limited food, 3 small boats, a sledge, and the hope of reaching land. After abandoning the Endurance, the crew set up camp on the floating ice sheet. They checked their supplies carefully. They had 3 small boats, 1 sledge to move on the ice, some personal belongings, and about 1 month's ration of food. Sleeping space was limited. Many had to sleep on the ice, huddling close together to keep from freezing. There was almost no chance of a passing ship finding them. They had been out of contact with the world for over a year, and no one knew if they were alive. Shackleton had only one resource, his skill and experience, but even that had limits. How long could faith alone keep them alive? The nearest land, Shackleton estimated, was Paulet Island, 550 kilometers away across the icy sea. Ironically, gear left there by a Swedish expedition 12 years earlier would now be their lifeline. The crew decided to attempt reaching Paulet Island. Each man was allowed to carry only 2 pounds of essentials. Shackleton reminded them that life was the most precious thing. Gold coins and his Bible were left behind in the snow. Frank Hurley, the photographer, could carry only 150 of his 400 negatives due to the weight restriction. These photographs would later tell the world the story of their survival. Due to food shortage, some of the puppies on the ship were sacrificed to feed the crew. After preparation, goods were loaded onto the boats and sledges. Each boat weighed about 1 ton, and the ice surface had softened under the summer sun, making progress slow and difficult. After 3 hours of hard effort, they had advanced only 1 mile. The ice sheet drifted unpredictably, making every step exhausting. Shackleton decided to camp and wait for the ice to move closer to land. This camp would later be known as Ocean Camp. Shackleton delegated small tasks to each crew member to keep spirits high and prevent depression. On the 21st of November 1915, the pressure on the ice increased and the ship bounced on the water before sinking completely. The crew watched the Endurance disappear, but their focus remained on survival. Days turned into weeks. The ice sheet drifted eastward, farther from land. On the 23rd of December 1915, Shackleton decided they could no longer wait. Once again, they began moving across the ice, carrying supplies on sledges, navigating treacherous ice and open water. Food remained critically low. Rations were limited to 1 biscuit a day, some cocoa, diluted milk, and high-fat meat paste. They hunted seals and penguins whenever possible. Shackleton often lied about food supplies to keep morale high, knowing mental strength was their greatest weapon. After months on the drifting ice, the crew finally spotted land on the 23rd of March, 1916. Shackleton recognized it as Joinville Island. But this was not the destination they had hoped for. They had drifted past Paulet Island, their original target, and were now 57 miles away from it. Other islands were still ahead, Clarence Island and Elephant Island. Beyond them lay only the open ocean, the Drake Passage, known as the most dangerous body of water in the world. Waves could reach 12 meters high, and thousands of sailors had perished there. The crew's food supply was nearly gone. They survived on raw seal meat, hunting penguins, and what little ice they could melt for water. Their lips were chapped, throats dry, and strength fading. Ironically, the 28th crew member, Blackborough, had stowed away on the Endurance against Shackleton's orders. Shackleton joked that if food ran out, Blackborough would be the first to go. Fortunately, they never had to act on this grim joke. By the 7th of April 1916, after months on the ice, the 3 boats reached Elephant Island. After 497 days at sea and on ice, the crew finally set foot on solid ground. For a desolate, uninhabited rock, it felt like heaven. Elephant Island, however, offered no rescue, no supplies, and no human contact. Shackleton studied the options. Cape Horn 800 kilometers northwest, Falkland Islands 880 kilometers east, or South Georgia Island 1,300 kilometers northeast. He chose South Georgia, believing that crossing the island on foot and finding a whaling station offered the best chance of rescue. Shackleton took a small team of 5 men and set out across the Drake Passage in a small boat. They rotated rowing for 4 hours and resting for 4, exposed to winter winds and treacherous waves. Hours turned into days. Waves filled their boat, and exhaustion threatened to take them under. After weeks of battling storms, they were only 3 miles from South Georgia Island. A final storm tossed their boat, threatening to undo everything. Using their remaining strength, they paddled through, slowly advancing toward the shore. Shackleton, Worsley, and Crean decided to attempt it on foot, leaving heavy equipment behind to travel light. For 36 hours, they climbed snow-covered peaks, descended dangerous slopes, and navigated unknown valleys. Finally, they reached Stromness Whaling Station, completing the first crossing of South Georgia Island on foot in history. Their beards were long, faces darkened, and clothes torn, but their courage and determination had achieved the impossible. Meanwhile, Shackleton's focus turned to the 22 crew members left behind on Elephant Island. He arranged for rescue, knowing their survival depended on leadership and hope. Once Shackleton and his small team reached Stromness Whaling Station, they rested, ate, and recovered. But the biggest challenge remained: the 22 crew members stranded on Elephant Island. Shackleton immediately began planning their rescue. He made Frank Wild the temporary leader on Elephant Island. Under his command, the crew built a shelter by turning over their boats and survived 128 days on the island. They hunted penguins and seals, rationed food carefully, and clung to hope, repeating every morning, "Pack your bags, friends, the boss can come today." Months passed, but Shackleton's determination never wavered. 3 attempts to reach Elephant Island with rescue ships were blocked by ice. Finally, the Chilean government provided the ship Yelcho. On the 25th of August 1916, Shackleton departed for Elephant Island. After 6 days, he reached the island. All 22 men were alive. They had endured months of cold, hunger, and uncertainty, relying on courage, leadership, and teamwork. Black Burrow's leg had become infected and required amputation. Rickenson had suffered a heart attack, but survived. Shackleton had left with 27 men and returned with all 27 alive. Their survival was a testament to leadership, resilience, and unbreakable teamwork. More than a century later, in 2022, researchers discovered the wreck of the Endurance in the Weddell Sea, 10,000 feet below the surface. Remarkably well preserved, the ship serves as a reminder of their incredible journey. Today, Shackleton rests on South Georgia Island, leaving behind a story that inspires courage and determination. Although his original goal of crossing Antarctica failed, he achieved something even more miraculous: the survival and safe return of his entire crew. This story, friends, proves that determination, courage, and teamwork can overcome the impossible.